Hello and welcome everyone to the Raising Ready Readers webinar. My name is Beth Yates and I'm the children's consultant from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I will be your host and your question moderator today. And our presenter today is Katie Lehman, a librarian at the Muncie Public Library and the founding leader of Raising Ready Readers. A few announcements for you. To register for other webinars or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library, and it's under Services for Libraries. This session is 1 hour, so you're eligible to receive 1 LEU for this presentation. If you're watching a recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LEU are in the video's description on YouTube, or you can find those instructions on the ISL's continuing education site under LEU policies. But in short, when you watch a recording, your director or someone in HR should create a certificate for you, as they are the ones who can verify that you watched. Okay, I think we're finally ready to get started. Again, our presenter today is Katie Lehman of the Muncie Public Library. She's the founding leader of Raising Ready Readers. We're thrilled to have her. Take it away, Katie.
Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you everyone for being here today. As I was watching everyone introduce themselves and kind of talk about where they were from, I was in awe. I'm so happy to have not only my fellow Indiana peers here, but also for those of you attending from out of state and out of country. I'm so happy that you're here, and I hope that you will enjoy the presentation today. So some of you already kind of got ahead of the game here, introducing yourself. What I'd like to see is who's in the Zoom. That's our next slide here, sorry. So what I'd like you to do, I am going to pull up the chat so I can just look at this as it comes in. I'd like you to tell me where you're from and what kind of youth services staff you're working with. So specifically, how many staff your library has available in the youth services department. So you guys can go ahead and start typing. I'll kind of talk as those come in. Let's see. Okay, one. Okay. One programmer, okay. Lots of ones today, okay. 3 part-time, 1 full-time. One academic librarian, one assistant that works with youth, okay. 3 full-time, nice. From Maine, very nice. Literacy facilitators, awesome. All right, I'll give you guys about 30 more seconds before we move on. Three full-time. Dominican Republic. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. The reason I like to ask this question is just to get an idea of who's in the room and then how this could apply to you and your particular library. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do here in the Ready Readers program, as well as the staff that we're working with. But today I really want to make sure this is applicable to everybody. So we'll talk about what you can do if you're in a small library or you're rocking that staff of 1. As well as how you could try and replicate this in your own branch. So I like to ask this next question just to get an idea of what your interests are as far as why you attended today and what are some of the literacy needs that you see in your community. So for this one, I'm going to open that chat back up, but feel free to unmute yourself and kind of call out why you attended and what are some of the literacy needs that you see that need addressed in your community. So you can unmute and call out, or you can type in the chat box. It's up to you. So we've got a gap in literacy needs from schools to how we at the library can help. Only preschool closed last year. That's going to cause a gap as well. Don't have a story time, okay? Poor reading scores in the district. Nice working with your Boys and Girls Club. Okay, I'll give about another minute for sharing. Better serve our patrons. Not getting the support at home. Oh, yes. Kids who don't want to read because it's too boring or it's hard. That sounds like the kids that come into my program every day. New ways to bring kiddos in. Welcome, Johnny. All right, thank you all for sharing. So since I've asked you to share, I think it's very important that I also share why I choose to do what I do every day. So over the past 6 years, I've worked with 140 children through literacy and reading tutoring sessions here at the library. And through that work, I have seen reading affect way more than just schoolwork. I have kids who come in whose self-confidence is so low that they can't make themselves small enough at the table. I've seen it impact their behavior, and some of you may have too. If you've ever seen a kiddo where a book comes out and all of a sudden we start getting irritated, frustrated, I don't want to do this, doing anything to avoid that book, you know that it can impact their behavior. And another thing is it can impact that relationship with their parent or caregiver. Oftentimes I've had families come in who are seeking help and they want to help. They want to help their student, but it's causing a very frustrated dynamic between the parent and their child. Parent gets frustrated, kid gets frustrated, and then it's not great for anybody in the situation. On the flip side of this, I've also seen the benefits of this work. I have seen not only increased reading levels, but I've seen better comprehension and vocabulary from the students who complete the program, better fluency, and my absolute favorite, stronger confidence. One of the things I stress with any tutor that comes to work in the program is that sometimes we don't build those literacy and reading skills until that confidence is established, because until a child thinks that they can do it and knows that they are capable, sometimes it's hard to get them to do the work. So today, I'm going to give you an overview of the Ready Readers program and what we do here specifically in Muncie. We'll talk a little bit about the data. And when I say the data, I'm going to speak specifically on Indiana's data in regards to reading level and a couple other data points. We'll talk about the effects of low reading ability and how that impacts a student as they move through their education, as well as how it impacts them as they move into the adult world. And then my favorite parts. We'll talk about why this works for libraries and why libraries are the perfect avenue to start targeting literacy and reading skills, and how you can do that if you've got a small staff. I saw lots of you are a small, mighty staff of one, and how you can make maximum impact with what you have. We'll talk about partnerships and how to get those partnerships established in your community and how they can help you in terms of building your literacy and reading instruction programs. And I'll share a couple of success stories with you, and then we'll go over some frequently asked questions before I open it up to overall questions to the group. So I could talk about Ready Readers all day. As Beth mentioned, I am the founding director of the program. It was started in March of 2016. And at the time, my first year, we had a whopping total of 13 students, and it was just myself that was running the program at the time. And from there, we've grown. We now currently serve anywhere from 40 to 45 students in a semester. It's myself and one other full-time person who holds weekly one-on-one sessions with students. And we do that with children as young as 1, although I do have to make a side note, most of them don't come in at 1. We usually start about 2, up through the end of 5th grade. And we do these sessions in home. We do them virtually via Zoom and also here at the library. Our sessions are 30 minutes and they occur once a week as arranged by the parent or guardian, whoever is taking responsibility of bringing that child to the session. We target fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and increasing reading level, which ties into the science of reading. If you're familiar with that, those are the targeted skills. And my one note is that all of our sessions are play and game based, and it doesn't matter what the age of the student. So we find that this works really well with our kids because many of them are coming in after school and they've already done their 7 to 8 hours of school and they really don't want to do any more. So we try to make sure that we are engaging them in a fun way that helps build those reading skills, but also helps them come to like at least books. When I talk to parents, I say we are a two-part program in that we really want them to improve their academic skills. We want them to do better in school. We want them to be prepared for school if they're not in it yet. But we're also a library. So I want to engage children with literature and with books in a way that that helps them come to terms with books are not only a way of learning, they're not more work to be done, but there's something that you can fall in love with. Like you can love and enjoy reading. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's perfectly okay to sit down and just take in a book. And we've been able to do that with many of our children. Currently, we serve Muncie, and I just put Muncie with no specific area because as long as the student lives in Muncie, no matter what school they attend, if they're homeschooled, then we will work with them. The only stipulation we put on it is that we only do in-homes on the south side of Muncie, which is where our branch is located. And that's just comes into travel constraints because it would take more time to travel to the person's home and back, and that would take up some session spaces. I like to talk about how our Ready Readers has impacted the Muncie Public Library system as a whole. Because this is my 7th year working in libraries. And one of the things I noticed is that we make a positive impact not only on the kids, but we really help our own library system by having a program like this. So roughly 120 people come into the library a month. That ranges, that's an average. So it's anywhere from about 120 to 200, and that counts the student and anybody who comes in with them. So a lot of times we have parents or guardians who bring younger siblings or older siblings, and they will use the library while the student is in session. This has helped us create more library users. So oftentimes the families that enroll in the Ready Readers program are not frequent library users or haven't ever been to the branch, to any branch in general. And then by engaging their student with sessions, they start checking out more materials, they start coming to more programs and become more of that library user that we want to see in our community. Ready Readers has created a lot of positive PR for our library, not only on the impact that we're making with our students in kind of the non-traditional approach through the game-based learning and by doing in-home sessions, but also just in general of having a program that was born out of serving a community need. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our questions section. So here's our data, Indiana. And for the other states that are here, I guess this gives you a look at what we're dealing with here in Indiana. But according to the Indiana Youth Institute Kids Count Data Book, great resource for any of you that haven't visited that, Indiana is ranked 40th in the country in the amount of 3- and 4-year-old children enrolled in pre-K. So that's about 41% of our children this age are enrolled in preschool. Now, we're not going to do a share at this point, but I do want you to think about how that impacts their literacy skills and their kindergarten readiness as they're moving forward towards that education and entering that school system. In addition, 37% of our children are reading proficiently by the beginning of 4th grade. Now, when I first read that, I was like, man, that's just over a third of our kids. That's 2/3 that aren't at grade level. And then I noticed that this is higher than our national average, which is below 1/3. It's 31%. So this isn't just an Indiana issue. This is a national issue. And it's something that we as a nation kind of need to address. If our kids aren't prepared as they're moving for school, we're not setting them up for success. So how can we do that? why is it important that we do that as well? So we know that students who are not reading on grade level by the end of third grade, some states will say by beginning of fourth, begin to struggle in other subject areas. And the reason for this is because that's the switch from learning to read to reading to learn. So subjects that once didn't include a bunch of reading are now reading's creeping its way in. It's math, we're having more word problems and story problems. We're doing more with science experiments and having to read directions and instructions and follow them. So we see a lot of kids who struggled in reading begin to struggle in other subject areas beginning in about fourth grade. And what think about the impact that has on confidence. Up until that point, you may have struggled with reading, but you were still really great in math. And that's kind of an area of confidence boosting for that student. But now we're starting to struggle all around. And a lot of times at this point, I just really see that self-confidence hit the floor. Students who are not reading at grade level by the end of third grade, beginning of fourth, are more likely to drop out of high school. And then this is a trickle down effect. So high school dropouts are more likely to participate in risk-taking behaviors that lead to incarceration. When I first began in the after school world, one of the things that I heard that I had to do some research on is that the state looks at iRead scores to determine how many jail cells they're going to build. Sorry, not true. But they do look at them in terms of, we know there is a correlation between reading at grade level by the end of third grade and then the trajectory that that can put students on. So they consider it, but they don't use that to determine how many jail cells they're going to build. Maybe that was a scare tactic in a training I took, I don't know, but it's stuck with me for the last 7 years. Those who have low reading ability or are functionally illiterate, in reading through the chat, I know one of our participants today said that a lot of the adults in the community have low literacy skills. And so it's very hard for the students or the children to get help at home. But so this is some of the stuff that those people may be facing. They may have or experienced social challenges, limited access to information. Think about how much information you take in via reading or text every single day. And if you're not able to read or are functionally illiterate, then you're missing out on that information. Potentially less employment opportunities, as well as potential poor health outcomes. Now, this information came from some research I was doing for a local parents of preschoolers group. And so I was really interested in that poor health outcomes and how literacy skills would tie into that. And it goes to reading about how things could impact your health, reading about ways to improve your lifestyle. And then there was also, think about if you've ever had a procedure or been prescribed medication, the doctor gives you a rundown, but if you don't have a person around you or you yourself cannot read the instructions that they give you, that can produce some pretty scary outcomes. So why libraries? Why are we all here together today, taking this training and talking about what we can do as libraries to promote literacy skills? Libraries make a great environment for building literacy skills and building reading skills. And part of it's because of what we're already doing, but we'll talk about that on the next slide. But one thing that makes libraries sorry, lost my train of thought, makes libraries a great place is our environment. A lot of parents, guardians have had negative relationships with schools themselves, so they don't always feel welcome in going back into their child's school to talk about what their child needs. So libraries kind of pride ourselves on providing that welcoming environment that accepts everyone and anyone. And also we have a very literacy rich environment. There's books, there's materials all around. We give our families access. So our families don't even have to have a library card to come in and sit down and read books with their students. For us here, you don't have to have a library card to attend any of our programming. It's not on my enrollment paperwork. I don't ask if they do. Through conversations, it sometimes comes up, but we give people access to services that they may not be able to access otherwise. A lot of libraries are structuring and doing parent-child programming where they're working with both the parents and the children within the program. so that almost serving as a model for those parents on what they can replicate then at home. In our community, our library is very well connected to a network of nonprofit partners. We serve on various community engagement groups, boards, and just really pride ourselves in knowing what's going on in the community, but also then being able to connect with people who can then connect people back to us with the services that we provide. So what are libraries doing already that really help promote literacy and reading skills? So if you have story times that follow Every Child Ready to Read, you're starting to do the work. That provides a literacy-rich environment and also models to parents how we can read stories to our children. We're doing community responsive programming. So we're basing programming off the needs of our communities. And this applies to areas outside of literacy as well. If you're doing programs like or consultations with a local lawyer, if you've got Workforce One coming into your library, if you have the phone program where people can sign up to get a free phone, any of that being responsive to the needs of your community is positive programming. And we can tie literacy into that if it's something that you're already doing. We provide new experiences and opportunities. That's one of the best things about going to the library, is getting to do something you otherwise may not have been able to do. Through our STEM programming, through literacy programming, and all of everything that falls in, around, and in between. We offer new experiences to our community, and in a low stress environment where kids can engage without the stress of having to pass a test or having to meet a standard. And we're stepping outside. Community outreach has been a big push here at this branch, and I know it varies across libraries because of staffing and many other issues. But we've been really focusing on getting outside of our library and holding programming where people are. So we've done pop-up libraries at bus stations, parks. One of my favorite outreaches that I do is I dress up as the library lady. It's a whole persona. And I take a bag of books with me and I drive around to local parks and I hand out books to kids who are there with their families. If you want to learn more about that, I'm happy to talk about it. It's very fun. I can tell you the approach that we take. We also promote programming while we do that. We talk about upcoming kids programs, ask them if they're signed up for summer reading. One year we even took, the youth librarian came with me and she signed people up via paper form right then and there. So it was really fun. But we're getting outside. We're getting outside and we're working with our community where they are. So we're not even asking people to come in anymore. At least some libraries, and really working on getting ourselves out and involved in our communities. So here's where we talk about what you can do in your individual branch to really promote literacy skills and promote reading. Now, I have this broken down into sections because, as we've seen, some of the libraries here today have a staff of one. And so it would be very hard to replicate the Ready Readers program, but I'm not saying that that's impossible, but we could talk about ways to do it. But here's some things that you can do without any additional staff. One is review Indiana standards. If you're in Indiana, and if you're not, review the standards that your state is using in terms of literacy and reading instruction. I'm not saying plan your programming around them. I'm just saying keep those in mind while you're planning your story times and your programs for the ages that you're targeting. For Indiana, we have InView, which is from the Indiana Department of Education, and you can learn about your local school's performance. It will tell you how they did on their iRead scores, or on iRead, on iLearn. It'll tell you attendance data for that school and a kind of for the school system, and it'll give you a glimpse into why some of your students may be struggling, or your students or patrons, I should say. If you're able to, partner with your school system in whatever way you can. And that looks different for everybody because, again, we go back to staffing. You could offer classroom collections for teachers or do kindergarten readiness programs that add to or supplement the school system's own programs. So we've done some kickoff to kindergarten stuff here. We've done a specific kindergarten readiness program where the students would show up and we would talk to them about sitting in desks and raising our hands and walking in a line. Some of the things that a Jumpstart program would do but we did them here at the library at a different time than what the school was offering Jumpstart. There's also some stuff that you can do that won't take any additional staff, but it will take additional time. One of those is offering a reading resources service. So how that works here is that any parent with a child in Muncie can call our office. We have some guiding questions that we ask them, and we put together a tailored resource kit of literacy games and activities for them and their student. The only thing that we say is that they have to be able to come pick them up from the library. And that is a free service that we offer. We don't charge parents anything for picking them up. They do not have to check this out. It is for them to keep and then take home and use. They can, if they're, when they're done with it, they can pass it on to somebody else, or they can laminate it and save it for the next kiddo that they work with. But it's a free service. It is pretty highly utilized. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll offer this service to a potential Ready Readers family if we have to place them on our wait list. That way, in the meantime, they have something to work with their students. If we also do biannual bulk literacy kits that we put out in our youth services department. So Ms. Sydney, who's the specialist in the program that works with me, and I just did this for our fall semester. We put together 75 literacy kits that we split between our two full service branches that go out in our youth services departments. And those are structured to be for preschool to kindergarten, kindergarten to first grade, and first grade to second grade, and then third grade through fifth grade. And families can, again, come pick those up. Those are, we call them bulk kits because they're all the same within those grade levels. They're not tailored to any one individual student, but they are very popular, particularly at our Kennedy branch, which is on the north side of town, but our Maring-Hunt branch also goes through theirs pretty quickly. And we only do those twice a year because it is a lot of work that goes into them. You're talking about making 75 kits. That's a lot of work and resources, but they are highly utilized within the community. So there's also some things that you can do that are dependent on how many staff you have. So there you could get involved in your local education coalitions, committees, and groups, do outreaches to local preschool daycares and elementary classrooms. Now, one of the outreaches that I do that is a little bit different, we do offer storytime outreaches here, but I also offer one-on-one outreaches to our local preschools and daycares. So what I've done is I will set up a couple visits with the center, and I will actually do 15-minute mini sessions with each of their students that are attending the preschool or the daycare. So we go off to a corner of the room, we play games and do activities, and then everybody gets to cycle through and have their own little mini session. And they're usually at the end of those, I will leave the director or the teachers with some sort of materials as well, whether that's books or a kit for each of the students that's attending the center or in that particular classroom. I've also gone to elementary classrooms. I had the honor of working with a teacher at the elementary school just across the street. And she would give me a target skill that her class was working on or a topic that they were learning about. And I would build a story time around that. And I would go once a month and visit her classroom of third grade students. And that was really fun. It kind of utilized my background a little bit, as well as utilizing the library side of programming. And of course, if you have the staff, you can also start a reading tutoring program like Ready Readers. There are several ways that this can be done. This can be done with one part-time staff or full-time, dedicated to the position, depending on how many kids you want to serve. Can also be done with existing staff if you keep your enrollment small. One of the libraries that is potentially launching a Ready Reader style program is planning to use a small portion of their part-time staff hours to hold sessions at their library. And we'll talk about the other library that's implemented this program a little bit later. I'm going to do a shout out to them, but so there are ways that this can be done. And if you are interested in starting a program like Ready Readers at your library and you want more specifics about what that could look like, take my contact information at the end of the presentation today and reach out. You can call me, you can email. I love brainstorming with people. Up until this year, I was the only person in Indiana running a program like this, and I've had trouble finding one across the state, or not across the state, across the country, another program that does exactly what we do here in the Ready Readers program. So I love seeing people interested in wanting to kind of build that model up, and also helping create a network of people who are doing the work, doing the same work within libraries and within the state and within the country with our friends who are here from out of state today. We wouldn't be where we are in Ready Readers today without our partnerships. So we've established well-established partnerships have been one of the driving factors in our success and are one of the driving factors in a lot of successful programming that we do here with the library. So I did want to talk about a little bit who we partner with and how we do that. So we work with local community centers, and the way we do that is we offer them as an offsite session center. So sometimes we'll have kids who are enrolled in after school programs at community centers, and it can be difficult for parents to coordinate getting them from the center to a session and back, or how they're going to just work a reading session into that in general. So we take that stress off of them. And I go to the center and hold the session with the student at the center. Here it's our Ross Community Center. Their executive director is Jacqueline Hanneman, and she has served as then like the stand-in guardian overseeing the session at that time. We've begun working with our after school programs like our Boys and Girls Clubs, and our YMCA also runs our after school program. And the way we've done that is I have held community literacy tutor training sessions. And then, so I've trained community members how to do what we do here in the Ready Readers program. And then I place them in those after school programs to tutor students for a commitment of at least one semester. So we only serve 40 kids here in the Ready Readers program, and we recognize that that impact is very small in regards to the amount of students that need the help. So what we've tried to do then is create more people that can go out and do the work with students in places that we can't necessarily be. Ball State University is our local university here in Muncie, and we've worked with them to help create some tutors. So we pull students in for literacy tutor training series. We also can sometimes partner a parent or a student with a tutor from Ball State if they need additional services, or if we currently have a wait list and we can't serve them at the time that they need. This one makes me smile because just recently I got a phone call from a parent who was interested in enrolling their student in the program. And when I asked, where did you hear about us? They told us they heard about us at their pediatrician's office. And that was a very reflective moment for me. I've worked a lot with this particular health provider over the last 7 years. So to hear that a parent saw that at the pediatrician's office and followed through with that phone call was exciting and humbling at the same time. And then we have all of our nonprofits. Like I mentioned earlier, we are a part of a nonprofit network that is very vast here in Muncie. Muncie has been big on trying to implement a cradle to career approach to serving families. So we at the library are a part of that approach, and making sure that when one particular partner's services end for a family, that there can be someone, if they need services still, that they can hand them off to, and make sure, do a gentle handoff, as we say, and make sure that we're really wrapping around and supporting families and people in our community for the throughout their life. So there's really too many nonprofits to be named. We have like over 30 or 40 that we work with. And so I did want to do a shout out for them, but it would take up the majority of our time left if I went through and named them all. And I have to give a shout out, of course, to our most powerful partners, not only just for the Ready Readers program, but for libraries in general. And that's our patrons. And for me, that's our families and our students that we serve. Ready Readers would not exist without parents and guardians who trust us to work with their kids. And so for that, I am forever thankful. And we wouldn't also exist if we didn't have students who enjoyed coming to our program. Over the last 7 years, I can truly say I've had only one student who just did not like to be here. And if I were him, I wouldn't have liked to be here either. He would go to before school care, go to school, go to after school care and basketball practice. And then he would come see me at the very end of his very, very, very long day. And so we did make it work. We found a way to make it fun for him. I got really good at basketball and we played some reading games out on the court, but it was, it's just without those students, I wouldn't be here presenting to you today. And I wouldn't have had many of the experiences that I've had this past year. I got to travel to Las Vegas, where I received the National After School Association's Next Generation of Honor Award, and was the only rep from Indiana that year or this year, and was also just notified that I am the Indiana Youth Institute's Youth Worker of the Year for 2022. So it's been a very exciting year for us here at the Muncie Public Library and in the Ready Readers program. And I'm so grateful that you are all here today and wanted to learn more about the program. I did mention I was going to do a special shout out. So if anybody from Elkhart Public Library is here, please let them know, or please let Allison and Sonia know that I'm saying a big thank you to them if you guys aren't on today. So Elkhart Public Library here in Indiana approached me. We really started talking in January of this year, and they were interested in starting a Ready Reader style program at their library. So we invited them to come see us, to sit in on sessions with us. We shared some data, shared questions and forms, and now they have a program. It's called Growing Readers. They work with ages 3 years old up through the 2nd grade. And their 20 spots that they opened filled in less than a month. They opened in February and the spots were filled in 3 weeks. And they had a wait list of over 40 students. And to address that, they have begun adding more tutors. Can't give more details than that because Allison and Sonia and I haven't been able to connect since then. But I just wanted to give a nod to them because that's amazing. And also for me, spreading this this program model was one of my goals for the Indiana Library Leadership Academy that I attended in 2018. I had 5 years to get it in another library. And Sonia and Allison helped me do that by establishing the Growing Readers program. So thank you to both of them, and thank you to Elkhart Public Library for running with our model. So we're almost to the question section. But the reason I save questions for the end is because I like to address some questions that are frequently asked within my trainings and my sessions so that we can address those first and then open it up to any additional questions that you may have. So I get a lot about what is my role within the library. So I am a tutor. I do work with students every week. So I don't just present and talk about it. I actually do that. I do that work too. Right now, I have about 22, 23 students that I'm working with on a weekly basis. We just started our sessions yesterday, so we're welcoming our kids back. And, but in addition, I do outreach for the library. So I do go to events and talk up library programs. I do sit on 2 boards as a library representative, as well as participate in 2 other community coalitions that are focused around family engagement and education. I mentioned earlier, my staffing is myself and my wonderful specialist, Miss Sydney, who's been with me for the last 3 years. Between the 2 of us, we serve, like I said, 40 to 45 students within a week. We plan all of our sessions as well as do notes on them. So we spend the majority of our time either planning, note-taking, or working with children. And outside that, we do some fun library committee stuff as well, but it's just myself and her. Now, in the past, it's been just myself as a full-time employee. It's been myself and 1 part-time assistant. It went to myself and 2 part-time assistants. And then for a brief period of time, I was serving as the Director of Academic Enrichment here at Muncie Public Library and oversaw both our 21st Century Community Learning Center program, Great Achievers, and the Ready Readers program. And at that time, it was myself and 3 part-time people who held sessions with students. But through all of that, I still made sure that I dedicated some of my time to working with the kids because I really enjoy it. So it can look very different, and it has looked very different for us over the years. Do you use volunteers? Up until recently, no. And the reason for that had been that we pride ourselves very much on building a strong relationship with our families and our students. So with volunteers, especially since we have a university here, a lot of times what we would find is that we have people who are interested in volunteering for one semester, and then they're not going to come back the second semester. And I don't want to pair someone who's not going to stick around with a student, particularly with some of my students who have enough of that going on in their personal lives. So I haven't used volunteers up until very recently when I did the literacy tutor training series. I felt it would be very hypocritical if I asked these people to go out and work in other after school programs, but then did not accept them into my own. So I did have a few tutors work with me over the summer. We had them sit in with sessions for a couple weeks after they took the training, just to kind of get a feel for it. And then they were leading sessions with students, but we were sitting with them. And it went very well. I've had that, those tutors were from my first round of literacy tutor training series. And I had people as young as 16 take that. And I think my oldest participant was in her 80s and is also a Muncie icon. So talk about being under extreme pressure when you're leading someone that you've looked up to for your entire career. But it was awesome that she attended. She took a lot away from it, and she's one of our biggest supporters. So I haven't used them in the past. I am beginning to use them. The main concerns with using volunteers are just their consistency and making sure that you're not having a lot of turnover with your student, because when you keep things consistent, your kids make better progress. We do not use a set curriculum within the program, and I know that shocks some people. Our choice for that is that every child comes to us with a different set of needs and a different set of skills. And what works for one does not work for another. And that goes not only because we work with, as young as 1 up through the end of 5th grade, it's also because just everybody's different. So what we do is we are trained in various curriculums. And as we work with the student, we take pieces that will work best for them and almost fuse them together. So for some students, it might be more Orton Gillingham based. We use aspects of Fontes and Pinnell, as well as a lot of game and play based learning, incorporating those other elements as well. We do follow science of reading, which is just for the skills that we target. So we target fluency, vocabulary, phonics, and phonemic awareness, and building comprehension. So those are the skills we target in our 30-minute sessions, but we don't use a specific curriculum to do that. So my background, I have worked in libraries a total of, 10 years now. I worked as a circulation assistant in my undergrad at the Bracken Library at Ball State campus. That's actually where I met my husband. We were both working there. And then, so 3 years in an academic library setting. And then I have been with the Muncie Public Library for 7 years. In between, I did a 1 year as a behavioral therapist at an ABA clinic, which was actually great experience. I have a lot of background now in behavior management as well as the functions of behavior. And but as far as my degree, my undergrad is in elementary education, and I'm currently getting my master's in education with a focus in reading intervention. I'm completing a graduate certificate first before those classes apply to my master's, but that's my background. Always with kids ages from 2 to 5th grade. And the big one, are we grant funded? No. I know this is going to surprise a lot of people, but we are not grant funded. We have received grants that have helped us buy some supplies and some games for our program, as well as some furniture. And also a grant from the national level that helped us do that literacy tutor training series. But we as a program ourselves are not grant funded. The Muncie Public Library pays the salary of myself and my specialist. And then for the last 6 years, we've not had a budget, no dedicated money to our program, which is fascinating, right? So Miss Sydney and I are creative. We have created a lot of games ourselves based around reading and literacy, and we have adapted several well-known games to make them literacy and reading based. And then, as I said, once we did get some funding to purchase some activities. So we do have some games that we can just pull from now. But as a whole, we are not grant funded. And I don't want that to discourage you. because we started very small. Like I said, it was just myself as a full-time person, and I had a small amount of students as we were building a reputation within the community. But what we just decided, myself and the director at the time, that this was such a need within our community that we could not wait to find funding to start a program. We probably could have. It might have been successful, it might have not. I can't speak to that. I don't know. That's not what we did. But we saw that need within our community. We said, okay, we're going to look at what we have and how we can start meeting this need. And we're not going to look at money first. We're going to make this happen for our community, and we'll figure it out. And we did. Like I said, we have built it up to 40 to 45 students a semester. We still don't have a grant that funds the program, although I've recently been contracted by the Indiana After School Network to do some trainings for them. So they are paying me for those, and that money is going back into our program. So we are really excited for that opportunity, and the opportunity to do some paid trainings and then funnel that money back into our Ready Readers program here. But then again, as a whole, not grant funded. So, all right, now it's time to open it up to questions. Beth, would you like to do call outs, or would you like to do chat box?
Let's do chat, because I was just looking, and I think the way that the webinar is set up, I have to allow them to talk.
Okay.
So they can't just unmute themselves. So chat is probably the easiest. Any questions?
Okay, so I'm gonna pop the chat up here.
And while people are thinking, for those, okay, here we go. We've got one. Deborah wants to know, what is in the kits you pass out?
Okay, so in the kits that we pass out, the bulk kits or the tailored kits, there are games and activities that we either find or create and put together that target specific skills. So if a family has called in and said, my kiddo is really struggling with comprehension, that might be a couple passages and then games that relate to those passages that we sent home. Because they're not checking things out, we make sure these are things that they can keep, because they're not going to come back to the library. We make sure that everything they need to complete the activities is in the kit. Glue dots, whatever they might need, it's there.
And this is my own question, because I was wondering this how do you fund those kits?
We find and create. So I should say the library does pay for those supplies there. So the envelopes and any of the printing that goes into that. I mean, we use the library supplies there. So but we don't have money to like buy things to put in those per se. So
Gotcha.
we have to use what we've got, or donations. Sometimes we get donations. But where should I start to learn about the science of reading? So I'll send some resources on to Beth, just some good articles that I found that you can kind of give you an introduction into the science of reading, and then one that'll give you a deep dive into it. I will say, if you're in Indiana, the science of reading is what is being used to guide after school lessons, or not after school programming in terms of the after school world. They're using that to kind of look at how they can help provide better early literacy environments for kids. So what kind of training is needed to be a tutor? There are a lot of different options for this. So I offer trainings on how to prepare people to use the approach that we do in here, which is a little bit different, but there are lots of different trainings you can take. Orton Gillingham is a really common and popular phonics-based program that works really well for all students. Originally, it was developed for students who have dyslexia, but being that it's phonics based, it really, I mean, it works. It just works for everyone. Miss Sydney and I are trained in that, but we are not trained to train. So we have taken the training, but we're not a certified trainer that can offer that. But there's a lot of different training options out there. And it really just depends on what you're looking to do at your library, and what kind of funds you have to dedicate towards that. Do you have any kind of dyslexia intervention? Okay, we talked about that just a little bit. We are trained in Orton Gillingham, which was developed for students with dyslexia. So it is a phonics-based approach that really is very, it's very explicit, and it's very structured in the method in which you teach and the steps you take to teach it. So If we know that a student has dyslexia, then we will lean more on our Orton Gillingham training with them, just because we want to make sure that we're meeting their needs. We still do that through games and activities, but we'll take the approaches that are detailed in that training. Could you share pictures? Of course, I do have photo releases from my family, so I can offer you some pictures as well, some basic information about the games you have adapted, sorry, to focus on literacy skills. I'll talk about a couple real quick, but I will send more information to Beth on that she can send out. So one of my students really wanted to learn how to play chess. And I was like, okay, I have you for 30 minutes. How can I make chess reading based? And so the way I did it was I put question marks on certain spaces of the board. And if you moved your piece to that question mark, you had to either answer a question about the story that we read, tell me the definition of a vocab word, do a sight word, break down or blend a word together. So it was really, we were still playing chess, but there was an added component to it. Yesterday, I was playing Connect 4 with a student, and I play Connect 4 with them in different ways. So I have a Connect 4 that has words on it. We use dot stickers and put them on there. One side is easier words, one side is harder. So we pick the color depending on what skill level the student is at. But yesterday, we just recently got some new Connect 4s, so those weren't on there. And I was like, okay, what can we do with this? I'm taking a course in writing instruction right now and how to read like a writer. So I said, okay, we're going to implement some new stuff today. I said, you're going to put your piece into the board, and then you're going to give me a line and a story. And then I'm going to give you the next line. And then you're going to build on. And we just built a story from there as we were playing Connect 4. And at the end, the student actually lost the round, which she was actually like, oh, that was a great story. Like, I said, yeah, it was really great. But what made it great? What do writers do that makes stories great? Like, what is it? And so we started talking about the language that they use, the words that they choose to use in their writing. And that kind of sparked a really interesting conversation with me and this particular student. She's also close to graduating out. So like she's going to finish up a couple sessions with me, and then she is on target for everything. And she is moving on out of the program since she doesn't need my help anymore. So I had a little more freedom with her in the session, because really we're just kind of at the phase out point. But it is, that's some of the ways we've adapted games. We have to adapt on the fly sometimes. We plan based on our students. So if our kid is very active and up and moving, then we're going to do a lot of stuff around the room. We're throwing Nerf balls at word targets on the walls, and we're hiding things or hiding clues around the room. We're going to put this riddle together and try to use these critical thinking skills. We've planned sessions like that and then had a student walk in on crutches. So this happened to Miss Sydney twice within a semester. One was crutches and one was a walking boot. And she was like, this is not going to work today. And she just pulled together a session, was ready to go. She's like, okay, flip a couple things around and we're at the table and we're good to go. I think it took her a whopping 5 minutes to flip a 30-minute session into something that could be done at the table. But we've had a lot of experience doing that, because you never know who's or how the kid's going to walk into the room that day. So, but I will send some more examples of that. Do you do training for parents and caregivers? Yes. So I do a similar training that's called Raising Ready Readers Parents Edition, that talks about what parents can do at home and what they can do with their child that still keeps it fun. Because I don't want to put more stress on parents. I'm a parent myself, and I always think it's funny. A lot of the things that I do in the program, I've not done at home with my specific child. I've done some of the games and the activities, but it's not like we sit down for 30 minutes a day and have a full reading instruction session. So the last thing I want to do is add more for parents and caregivers. But I do a training that talks to them about how to use what they have at home, how to provide a literacy rich environment, and how to use language that really builds that with their student. Let's see. Do you think you would ever put the training for parents and caregivers on YouTube? Possibly. We have a lot of resources on there for parents and caregivers that are just open to the public. During COVID, when I just didn't have a bunch to do for about 2 weeks, I recorded 84 YouTube videos that were story times, and also just videos on how to target literacy skills with what you had at home. So for example, we can send out that link that's already up there. One of it, we were talking about adjectives, and I just grabbed my plant from off on the side and I said, okay, we're going to talk about adjectives. Those are describing words. Let's describe this plant. And I was like, it's green, it's soft, it's bendy. And we just went, that's how we went through. But specifically telling parents, like, grab whatever you have. If you want to talk about describing things, it doesn't have to be some curriculum or something you've purchased. You can start building literacy skills just by having conversations with your kids. So.
Awesome. Katie, we are at the end of our hour, so I'm
Yep.
going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
So thank you to anyone who's watching this recording in the future. Bye.